Hi, I'm Lak Lakshmanan, Director of Analytics and AI Solutions at Google Cloud. I'll talk about what we observe with customers migrating to Google Cloud. In industry after industry, we see things getting more competitive with an added dose of disruption driven by technology. I want to share how we at Google Cloud think about using insights to gain a significant advantage to help your company drive down costs, increase productivity, all by optimizing your use of data and AI. What should you think about when choosing your technology stack for innovation? When you choose technology, you should be choosing it with the business impact firmly in mind. And it used to be that you had to have a lot of data in order to do innovation. That's still true when it comes to differentiated innovation. But if you're looking to become more efficient, for example, if you're trying to basically drive operational efficiencies, you can often take advantage of pre-built solutions. So the first thing that I would look for when I'm choosing a technology stack for innovation is what kind of pre-built and industry solutions can I buy rather than having to build myself. But then when it comes to building, for things that are the things that are going to set you apart from the competition, things that are differentiated based on unique data, unique capabilities that you have, then what becomes really important is ease of use. Because you want your workforce to be very productive. When it comes to data, the workforce that you're talking about, data engineers, data scientists, are a pretty hard tool set to go out and hire. So you want to make them as productive as they can be. So you're really looking at ease of use of technology. So third thing that you're thinking about is, if I adopt this technology, how fast can I move? Will this accelerate my adoption of technology and allow me to move much faster? So if you're successful then in taking technology and incorporating it, infusing it within your enterprise, now you start to worry about, am I the best of class? Am I staying ahead of my competition? So at that point, you also want to think about, am I choosing a technology provider that are themselves an innovator that will help me stay ahead? So if I were to summarize, when you're choosing your technology stack for innovation, you're basically looking for pre-built industry solutions to help you get started faster on things that are not differentiated, ease of use to drive operational efficiency, and ease of use to drive differentiation, and the ability to move fast, and the ability to keep you ahead in terms of how innovative that they themselves are. What are some scenarios where it makes sense for a company to migrate from AWS? There are three scenarios that come to mind. Three scenarios where I've seen our customers do it and be very successful, get business value out of the migration. The first is if somebody has an application or a solution that will move the needle on how you run your business. So in other words, if you can buy something that provides business value immediately, that time to value, the 6 months to 2 years that it might save you from having to build something yourself or to basically adapt or glue things together, that time is reason enough for you to move, right? So wherever you have a solution or an application that provides you immediate business value, you should adopt it. You shouldn't care which cloud it's on. The second scenario where it makes sense to migrate from AWS would be if you need to break down data silos. From a compete standpoint, the most dangerous situation is this. You have the data. If you have the data, it's very likely that your competitors also have very similar data. But they are able to derive insights from their data, but you're not. That sets you up for disruption if you're in silos, right? So if you have different organizations owning pieces of the data, you're not able to join it together, you're not able to adapt, you're not able to train machine learning models, you're not able to get insights. Now it becomes a huge danger for you. So the danger is not like if you're in a business where nobody has data, then it's sort of okay. But if you're in a business where your competitors have managed to break down data silos, if they're instrumenting every part of their business, they're observing different parts of their business, and you are not, now that is a case where you say, I need to break down data silos. And one of the ways in which you can break down data silos is to fundamentally shake up the IT department. And the way that you do that is by saying, okay, I'm going to basically carry out a migration. We're going to basically make sure that all of our data lands in a place where everyone can use it. You build a data mesh. Okay. So this is also true if you have the ability to disrupt a large player, if you can break down data silos. So either like you want to avoid being disrupted or you want to disrupt a large player. At that point, you might want to use the breaking down of data silos as the compelling event. So in that situation, you might want to use a cloud migration as a compelling event to break down data silos, to add data harmonization, to add data governance, to make your data much more usable, improve the data quality. So use cloud migrations as the event that drives your data strategy. So that's the second scenario. The third scenario is around operational efficiency. Let's say you already have the data, you're already drawing insights from it, but maybe it's taking you 10 hours to produce a report, or you need a team of 5 in order to run a simple metric. At that point, you might want to look at your data processing workloads and say, can I do these much more effectively and efficiently if I move to Google Cloud? So, but because on Google Cloud, all of our Marquee services are serverless, and it's a few well thought out, well put together, well integrated services. Typically what we find is that people moving to our cloud end up being much more efficient and much more cost effective in their data processing and machine learning workloads. The first scenario is very much a question of don't let the fact that there is a solution on another cloud stop you from migration. So in other words, if you look at Google's recommendation AI, or you look at Google Cloud's contact center AI, and you say, that thing will completely solve my problem, you should not worry about which cloud it's on. You should just go adopt that solution, because that time that it's going to save you is going to be worth a whole lot. And in that case, you also want to consider what I call the rule of the 1%. A 1% improvement in accuracy can often unlock a huge number of potential use cases. So the difference between a speech-to-text model, something that understands your conversations, a 1% improvement in that, a slightly better speech-to-text conversational model, can mean a lot less frustration and your ability to use an automated agent in many more scenarios. So that's the first. The first scenario here is the reason for migration is if somebody has an end-to-end application that solves your problem, go use it. Secondly, is the idea of using the cloud migration as a compelling event to break down data silos. And the third is to improve your cost posture, to become much more cost efficient in terms of workloads that are taking way too long or that are requiring too many people in order to produce it. So let's say that you're on Redshift today and you're running into scaling problems on Redshift. It's taking you too long to figure out all of the clusters, optimize the queries. Those are all times you could be innovating with data. Instead, you're essentially doing a whole bunch of operational infrastructure things. And the question is, Should I just stay on AWS and use Snowflake to get over the problems that Redshift has? Or should I move to Google Cloud and use BigQuery? Now, this is a pretty interesting problem, right? But what you should realize is that the problems that you're having with Redshift and that you're trying to replace with Snowflake is a symptom. It's not the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem that you have is that you have a data platform that consists of disparate services that are not fully managed. They're still based on clusters that you still need to write a whole bunch of integration with operational data for. So maybe this is your chance to rethink your data platform and consider whether you should go to an ecosystem that is very well designed for data and AI, rather than continuing to basically bolt on point solutions, right? Okay, so your data warehouse doesn't work, I'm going to use Snowflake. My messaging queue doesn't work, so I'm going to use Kafka. My data lake doesn't work, so I'm going to use Databricks. You could do that, and then you could basically start piecing together another cloud yourself. But why are you in the business of building your own cloud? Why don't you go to a cloud provider that has done an integration that gives you an amazing data warehouse that's BigQuery, an amazing data lake that's that's Dataproc, gives you managed services that are completely serverless Spark, serverless SQL with BigQuery, serverless message queues with PubSub. Take advantage of getting rid of infrastructure management. Go to a platform that takes care of all the infrastructure needs and focus on building and innovating. So when you pick a tool like Snowflake or Databricks, they work on all the three clouds, all the three major clouds. Whereas when you pick a tool like BigQuery, even though we have BigQuery Omni, it really works really well on Google. So are you not getting locked into Google Cloud when you pick BigQuery? Now that's a great question. And here's a way I would think about it. When you pick Snowflake or you pick Databricks, what you are actually picking is the tool, right? You're basically, yes, it's going to make it easy for you if you ever need to switch from AWS to Google Cloud. Your entire Snowflake data warehouse works on Google Cloud as well. So it lowers the switching cost of moving from one cloud provider to another cloud provider. But there's another switching cost that you have to think about. What is the switching cost if you have to move from Snowflake to Redshift, or from Snowflake to Synapse, or from Snowflake to BigQuery, or from Databricks to Dataproc, or from Databricks to EMR? There's still a switching cost, right? So that's the thing I want you to remember, that whether you pick a tool like Snowflake or Databricks, a data warehouse or a data lake that works on all the clouds, or you pick a cloud provider and you go with their native products, what you're actually doing is that you're trying to decide which switching cost you're willing to live with, right? And what I would encourage you to think about is, what is the trade-off here, right? You're picking your tool or your platform based on two things. What kind of differentiating features it has, what kind of cost it has today, right? What's there today, but also on the rate at which innovation is going to happen in the future. So the bet that you're making, because predicting the future is hard, right? The bet that you're making is, am I going to get more innovation from a technology provider that's focused on that one thing? Am I going to get much more innovation in data warehouses from Snowflake, from data lakes and lake houses from Databricks? Or am I going to get more innovation from a technology provider like Google or like AWS, which has a variety of different products? Am I going to get more innovation from an ecosystem? or am I going to get more innovation and more benefit from a focused tool? Now, I have a point of view on this, of course, and I believe it's an ecosystem, right? When GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine, when GKE makes container images load faster, that improvement accrues to serverless Spark and makes serverless Spark work better. And because serverless Spark uses BigQuery and runs on top of BigQuery, it operates on BigQuery, it makes BigQuery itself more valuable to you. So there is a flywheel effect that happens when innovation in one part of the ecosystem improves the rest of your ecosystem. And I think that flywheel effect over a large surface area with very innovative products like GKE, like Dataflow, like serverless Spark, like BigQuery will give you more advantage over time. The advantage that you get by picking the ecosystem and the innovation in the ecosystem will accrue much more over time. But fundamentally, the bet that you're making is the cost that you're picking which switching cost you're willing to live with. The switching cost between clouds or the switching cost between technology providers. And now, the other question that you have to ask is, if I'm going to pick a technology provider, right, and I'm not really going to move within a technology provider, should I nevertheless be picking Databricks or should I nevertheless be picking Snowflake? And again, I have a point of view on this. Part of the reason why a company like Snowflake did very well is because there were a lot of problems on Redshift. And Redshift was based on clusters. It was really hard to tune. It didn't really scale very well. So people are looking for options. And remember my point about switching costs. The switching cost from AWS was so high, they were looking for other options on AWS. And Snowflake happens to be there, and that happens to work. Same thing with Databricks, which grew up on Azure around a lot of the problems that existed with the data platforms on Azure, and Databricks was able to grow. So both of these companies essentially are where they are because of what I would consider drawbacks in the native data stacks on AWS and Azure. On Google, we don't have that issue. Our native data and AI stack is extremely good. And so if I were on Google, I would basically pick BigQuery. I would basically pick Dataproc and go with that. So let's say I've convinced you and you're saying, okay, I need to migrate to Google, but is this a 6-month project? Is it a 2-year project? How much effort is it to migrate? It depends. If you're migrating from one cloud to another, it tends to be a lot easier than migrating from on-premises to cloud, simply because you tend to have built a lot of technology debt on-prem, where on cloud, right, you've been on cloud typically for less time, and so you have less time to build technology debt. So usually what we see is that moving from one cloud to another is much easier than moving from on-premises to cloud. But regardless of whether you're doing it from between clouds or from on-prem to cloud, you want to think in terms of your goal, right? When you're doing migrations. And your goal typically is going to come down to how fast can I innovate? So I really think about the value proposition here. Don't just migrate for migration's sake. Don't just migrate just because you want to centralize things. Migrate because you have a clear outcome in mind. So the way I would start is I would think about all of the innovations that you want to be doing that you're not doing today. Okay? So for those innovations, set up new projects on Google, transfer the data that you need to carry out those projects, take on new use cases that we can help you build. We can help you build these new use cases and then mirror the data sources that you will need. For a while, you're going to have this hybrid environment where quite a bit of your use cases are going to be wherever you currently are. And these new use cases are going to be driven off data that is mirrored, in real time or in batch from your on-premises environment or from your other cloud provider onto Google. So get used to creating new things on Google. And at that point, then you're thinking about your second step, which is around cost. Look at the really expensive propositions, the Teradata instances that you're running, for example, and say, how do I basically migrate these Teradata instances to BigQuery? Those things are, fortunately, much easier than they ever used to be. That's because you have automated assessment tools, you have automated SQL converters, and that convert the vast majority of your scripts. We have ways to virtualize things so that all of your clients think they're talking to Teradata, but they're actually talking to BigQuery. So there are lots of ways in which we can help you migrate without having to shut everything down. So use those migrations from your really expensive workloads, your Teradata workloads, your Hadoop workloads, your Netezza workloads. Then the third step would be to go ahead and look at your ERP systems, your SAP systems, your Salesforce systems, etc., for which there are third-party connectors available that we can get data from those systems and start to build new, modern, AI-driven use cases on the data that is captured from your ERP systems into Google Cloud. So when you think about migrating, start with the innovation, move on to the cost optimization, and thirdly, take advantage of existing pipelines and connectors like with ERP systems. And by doing this, you will find that you basically start to have moved a considerable amount of the valuable estate into cloud, and then look at the rest of your estate and consider if those things are worth moving in the first place. Many times what we find is that once you've gotten the 70-80% of workloads that are really necessary, you start to make hard decisions on the remaining 20-30% and decide if these are things that are worth migrating or it's worth rewriting or worth doing in a different way. And again, there are ways to address those things, but you don't want to get into this mode of, I'm going to take everything that I have and move everything as is to the cloud, because then you're replicating all of the technology debt that you have on premises in this new environment rather than focusing on value. So some parting thoughts. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, you can do data-driven innovation anywhere. You can carry out, you can collect your data, you can process it, you can derive intelligence from it, no matter where you're running it. What it comes down to is how efficient are you at doing so, how many projects can you support, and how easy to use and how productive your people are when they're using that technology to carry out innovation. So when it comes down to it, you want to think in terms of the value that you get from adopting a particular piece of technology. And we firmly believe that Google Cloud can give you that value proposition because of our emphasis on fully managed services, our emphasis on an open platform, our emphasis on unifying and simplifying workflows. So today we talked about the realities also of migrating a platform. If you're not on Google, you will have to basically think in terms of how you carry out that migration. And again, you want to do that from a perspective of value. Where do you find the most value? Typically, it's going to be in the use cases that you're not doing today. Because face it, the use cases that you are doing today, you're already getting the value from the data today from those. So I encourage you to think in terms of new use cases and building them on a platform that makes it easy. And then look at where you're spending a lot of your time and effort in terms of tuning, cluster management, in terms of license fees, and thinking in terms of, okay, I will move from a Redshift, I will move from a Teradata, I will move those into an environment like BigQuery that makes life easier and makes your velocity more, right? So look at ways in which you can improve the velocity of innovation. And finally, right, look at the best of breed. Look at how do you maintain a sustained advantage. And the sustained advantage is going to come not only from the velocity. It doesn't matter how fast you work if you're working with fundamentally poorer technologies and poorer models than your competition. So make sure that you're working in an environment that gives you best of breed when it comes to data and AI. Thank you.